What is up guys, Taiki here, and welcome to the private video for the 30th of November. I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. This video is going to be ecosystem overview, right? Discussing Avalaunch, Phantom, Harmony, and the Terra chain, right? Terra ecosystem, because those are primarily the chains I discuss on this channel and in the Discord as well. So let's get right into it. But before I get into those ecosystem overviews, I kind of want to touch on this chart, right? The ETH BTC chart, because this is what everyone is talking about. This, of course, is taking the price of ETH and dividing it by the price of Bitcoin. I believe that the real flipping, right, where the market cap of ETH flips Bitcoin, is when this ratio hits 0.1625, roughly, right? I mean, some ETH gets burned, and new Bitcoin gets issued every single day and whatnot. So obviously, that's not a perfect number, but like roughly 0.16. So essentially, what needs to happen for ETH to flip Bitcoin is essentially ETH to outperform Bitcoin by 100%, which is definitely possible. If you think back into what happened from I guess late March to mid-May, right, when the entire market topped, ETH outperformed Bitcoin by 173%. So for ETH to flip Bitcoin, it has to essentially go up here, right? And I mean, it's kind of hard to imagine that, but I definitely would not be surprised if that happens. And my bias is that if ETH does flip Bitcoin, it would be really short term, and that might be the top for the markets. Because I mean, I feel like it's pretty difficult in the year 2021 or 2022 or even 2023 for ETH to sustainably flip Bitcoin, because there's still questions about like whether ETH 2.0 can scale, if sharding can be a thing, if rollups is the correct scaling solution. And there are people like much smarter than me working on this, so like I'm not gonna be like talk about like how it's like how I'm like I don't believe in Ethereum, right? Obviously Ether is the number two crypto asset, and it's going to be the L1 that I think is going to capture most of the market share. But in the short term, I feel like I feel like ETH flipping Bitcoin is like the most top thing ever, right? Especially at least for this cycle. And I don't really talk about market cycles, but I do believe in lengthened cycles and diminishing returns, right? That's kind of what Benjamin Cohen talks about. Of like we're not gonna top in like December of 2021, right? I don't think 4-year cycles are a thing. I think because Bitcoin and Ether, I think Ether is like just hit the top 15 in terms of like the largest assets, right? I think they flipped JP Morgan, and the Bitcoin, of course, is a top 10 asset, of course, in terms of market cap. But anyways, I think Bitcoin and Ether are going to trade like macro assets, like the SPY and like commodities as well. Of course, these altcoins, right? These low cap altcoins are going to have their own cycles of like go up like 30x and like down 80% and whatnot. But that's kind of how I think about it. And I wanted to bring this chart up because I've been seeing and hearing a lot of arguments about how like we've had a bunch of L1 rotations, right? Like Solana, Luna, Avalanche, Phantom, they all pumped so hard. Now it's time for ETH to take over. Right, it's time for all those other L1 coins to underperform and ETH to like really take over the market. And logically, that makes sense, right? I can definitely imagine a scenario where like ETH goes to 6K or 7K, and then the other L1 coins underperform. However, I feel like people were saying the same thing for Bitcoin back in September and October, myself included, right? I mean, I rotated a bunch of my assets, like my AVAX and Phantom profits back to Bitcoin, right? And like Bitcoin like really hasn't done anything. Fortunately for Bitcoin, like I can use it as collateral, right? And I'm just gonna show you this because just to remind everyone that you can do this. So this is the Notion, and if you just click these tabs, you can see like how much yield I'm earning on my AVE positions, and like how like what am I doing with those borrowed stablecoins? I'm like farming spell with it. So I just checked this like today, and I was like quite surprised at like how much spell I've accumulated. I essentially have like 100,000 spell on Avalanche. I think I have like, I don't know, like 40,000 spell on the Phantom ecosystem. And right now I'm just totally content just farming as much spell as I can, because I mean these farms aren't gonna last forever, right? These spell farms only exist to bootstrap the protocol, right? Because it's still a relatively new protocol, and they want to they kind of need to incentivize liquidity in the short term, right? For MIM, right? The magic internet money. But I feel like as Abracadabra spell MIM matures, they're not really gonna have to incentivize like liquidity by this much. So you should expect these inflationary rewards to decay over time, and it's kind of already happening, right? I feel like every other week these spell rewards are going down, and in the short term, I'm bullish spell, right? I guess I'm bullish spell short, mid, and long term, so I'm just like really happy farming this. But anyways, I don't really believe in back to the original point. I don't really believe in ETH taking over the market. Sure, it can happen over the in the short term, but the reason I say that is because when it comes to valuing these crypto assets, the way I've had success, essentially like buying low, sell high, or like just like buying high and selling higher, is by looking at the relative valuations of L1 coins. Because it's really hard to value like AVAX versus Luna, right? Like how the hell do you value AVAX versus Luna, right? The only way you can value them is by looking at the relative valuations and comparing it to, let's say, Ethereum. So for example, Solana, it's done really well because people are saying, why can't Solana be roughly the 10%, like 10% of the market cap of ETH, right? And everyone's like, that makes sense. And then it gets repriced at this point. For Avalaunch, why can't AVAX be 5% of the market cap of Ether, right? Which is roughly where it's at. Same goes for Terra. And when it comes to these, I guess, smaller L1s, I just kind of look at something like Tezos, right? I'm like, I like shit on Tezos a lot, but it is what it is, right? I mean, like what it's valuing things against Tezos has done well for me in the past, so I'm just going to continue doing it. And I often say that the floor, the support for Phantom is the valuation of Tezos, right? So that's why I think the risk reward on FTM is pretty good right now, right? And I'll talk about Tomb and the other farms later. And then Harmony, I believe Harmony will eventually flip Tezos at some point. And I'll go over Harmony as well, and more data points on why I believe a Q1 rotation for Harmony makes sense. There has been some bullish catalysts working in the background, but even if Ethereum outperforms like the entire market, and let's say it gets like $700 million market cap, then I feel like that only helps the narrative for Solana, AVAX, Terra, Phantom, or all these other L1s, right? Because I feel like we're all valuing these L1s based off of the valuation of Ether, right? Like why can't this L1 be X% the market cap of this other L1? And this is definitely bull market things, right? I guess like a bear market, right? You obviously have to go back to the fundamentals and like value these things on a more fundamental basis, like longer term, right? Based on decentralization and like scalability and whatnot. However, in the short term, like in a bull market, I feel like this is the best way to view these things, and it's kind of how I view these assets. And I think FTM, $5 billion is relatively undervalued, so that's why I choose to farm on FTM. And I've been farming for Tomb Finance, and obviously like this run up was insane, right? Harry announced some bullish news and it's just like pumped crazy, and now it's retracing. You should expect this to retrace, right? I'm not going to speculate on like what I think the peg should do, but I think on a macro scale, the peg should oscillate between let's say 0.9 to like 1.1 plus, right? And that's kind of how I view Tomb Finance and the peg. The longer term fundamental narrative for Tomb is pretty weak, right? I'm not going to argue against anyone being, I guess, pessimistic on like the longer term narrative for Tomb. But I'm not going to spend too much time on this. But from a game theory standpoint, I think it makes sense to align your incentives with that of Harry Ye's incentives, and that is to believe in the peg, right? And believe in infinite bid that his fund is backing this with, and it's like a I don't even know what to call this, but it does become a bubble when like there's this belief in the bid, the Harry bid, and then if the market believes in the bid, then the market is going to place a premium on Tomb, right? And of course, if the market cap of this becomes too large, and if the TVL of this grows way too large, right? Imagine this becomes like a top 3 TVL project, or like even like the number 1 ecosystem for TVL, number 1 project for TVL on Phantom. Let me actually check that real quick. I think they flipped Curve, but they flipped Curve. They're at 750 million market cap. So 750 million TVL. It's probably gonna flip Spooky and Geist, to be honest. And I would not be surprised if this becomes the number 1 TVL, right? I'm not gonna count any swap because it's at the bridge, but I would not be surprised at all. It's like 20% away from getting there. So my argument is that short term it makes sense, midterm iffy, longer term really iffy. And my yield is this when it comes to auto compounding, my Tomb TUM FTM position, it just sells the T shares that I earn and auto compounds it back to TUM FTM. And if you believe in the peg, then you're technically earning 0.7% right here at 0.78% a day on your FTM price exposure. So in the short term, I'm just focusing on this, and I say short term, but I actually think this can last a lot longer than people realize. And I'm not gonna say I'm not gonna hold this for the next few months, right? That's that would make me a crazy man, right? I'm already a madman for entering this in the first place. But I can definitely see myself holding this until the new year. I guess the reasons. I guess potential reasons on when I would exit this is if FTM goes parabolic for some particular reason. Not gonna lie, the price of FTM doesn't look that great, but I'm gonna have a more patient approach when it comes to FTM, and I'm just gonna wait for the catalyst to come. Right, one of the catalysts being Coinbase coming soon, or just waiting for the market to realize that hey, Phantom at $5.5 billion market cap, when Hedera is $6.5 billion. Doesn't make sense to me, right? And then maybe Algorand. I'm not gonna talk down on Algorand because the technology there is pretty impressive. But that's kind of how I'm thinking about the markets. So Grim is the auto compounder I'm using. I do want to bring up Reaper Finance, right? And the reason I'm not using this auto compounder is because they were exploited before, and once a project is exploited once, it's just I just feel iffy about it. But I did see this on Twitter where Reaper said, is there going to be a token? Love your farm. Yes, sir. Stay tuned. So I'm not really optimistic on auto compounder tokens, right? If you look at the tokens for auto compounders, they just don't perform that well. So even if you're interested in this potential airdrop, maybe it makes sense to put some capital into Reaper Farm. But even if you do get an airdrop, I would not expect it to be worth that much. But just bringing it to your attention in case you were interested. So next thing I want to go over is also a project on Phantom, which I think was pretty interesting, and it's called Spartacadabra. It's exactly what you would think. This is a fork of Abracadabra, and it's made by the same team that essentially created Spartacus, right? Which is an Olympus fork. And I'm only going to talk about this because I've gotten a lot of requests about Spartacadabra and Spartacus. But I'm not necessarily that bullish this project, right? Because if you look into the documentation, let's go into the docs here. Let me find it real quick. Yeah, so the initially supported tokens include Wrapped Stake Spartacus, right, which is the Olympus asset, right, and YVFTM. And YVFTM is already on Abracadabra, so, right? So why would you use, Spartacadabra over Abracadabra? And YVFTM doesn't really yield anything, so I don't know why they're using this. It just seems like they're just creating this product to create this 9-9 meme of let's leverage your Spartacus. And I know that if you hold Spartacus, you get airdropped tokens, but even then, I don't think it's necessarily worth it. I think only roughly 2% of the supply for Charm, I believe, this is the token, right, is going to be allocated to Spartacus holders. And generally, you saw with Omise Go, right? I played Omise Go, playing this airdrop narrative, right? I think I bought it. I forgot where I bought it. I think I bought it roughly here, and I sold it roughly here. Because there's this whole narrative about being airdrop tokens, but as soon as the airdrop happens, the token just dumps, right? Because people just only hold this token for the airdrop, and the airdrop doesn't even sound that impressive to begin with, just because I believe only 2% of the supply gets handed to you, and I don't think it mentions here, but I think I saw it somewhere where 2.5%. I think 2.5% of the supply gets airdropped to Spartacus holders. But it just sounds like a cash grab to me. I think they're just using the Abracadabra meme, the brand, to just introduce something to just create leverage for their own thing. If you want to play this, go for it. But I'm not really playing these own forks. And the reason I'm not playing these own forks is because I don't really have an edge in playing own forks. When you're in the markets, you always have to ask yourself, what is my edge, right? What is my alpha, right? Because you and I, your risk tolerance is different from mine, and how I navigate the markets is probably different than yours. So, you always have to think about what is my alpha? What is my edge? And the edge with Olympus forks is just by being early, right? Like if you're in front of your screen all day and keeping up with like all these new own forks in like 10 different chains, then yeah, you might have an edge and you might make money, because if you can enter in the first, like let's say it's 12 hours, you can just like dump on people like 3 days later. And sure, like maybe you can look at the fundamentals of these own forks, say like, oh, maybe like this one will outperform this, yada yada yada. But I don't really have an edge playing these own forks, so I just choose not to participate. I feel like my edge is identifying farms, building conviction, and like trying to like play these rotations, and not being too attached to the tokens I own, trying to remain as rational as I possibly can. So I'm not really playing these own forks, but Spartacadabra gonna launch on Phantom, could be interesting, right? Could be interesting. Doesn't seem like it has great fundamentals, given like the assets you can use to leverage isn't going to be that great. But more yield bearing tokens will be updated after initial launch. And if you want the Abracadabra token or the Spartacadabra token, I would just focus on participating in the liquidity bootstrapping pool, right? The LBP, which is going to occur December 1st, 12 p.m. or 12 a.m. UTC time. And for those that don't know how this works, is that essentially it's a way for I guess new projects to launch a token and to have I guess like natural price discovery. And when it comes to launching tokens, right, there's always a threat of bots, right? If you just launch a token, like first comes first serve, then bots will just like buy it up initially, and then us humans just get wrecked. But how liquidity bootstrapping pools work is that it's going to be on Balancer. It was designed by Balancer. It's going to be on Beethoven, which I'll talk about later. But essentially, the token is designed to go down like on this curve, right? So even if a whale or a bot like snipes a token initially, well, if no one buys, then the token just goes down perpetually. So like the bots get wrecked. So it's a way for I guess it's like a more fair way to launch a token, right? Because if you think that this token is worth, let's say, $1, right, and then you can just wait until people you can just wait until the price goes down to this point. Maybe people just keep buying it up, right? Obviously, if there are more buyers, then this pool just keeps going up. But if you want to participate in this, I feel like I wouldn't buy Spartacus to get the airdrop, right? I feel like that's just that airdrop trick is like a psychological trick for them to like get you to buy into their token. But if you want to participate in Spartacadabra, just participate in this, right? And maybe use the protocol and whatnot. But short term, I don't really see a fundamental narrative for this other than like leverage your Spartacus. But there's just a standard own fork, and they're just using they're just forking Abracadabra for this pool. But who knows, right? I'm open to being wrong. Okay. So other farms that I want to talk about in case you want to farm on the FTM chain, right? Just for my research, there's this Phantom DAI offer, right? This is 50%. This is a 50% and 50% ratio for FTM and DAI, paying 80% APR roughly. And you can go to, let's say, Grim Finance, right? You can also go to you can also go to Reaper as well. But Phantom DAI offer, you can auto compound it, earn roughly 122%. On your FTM DAI position, right? In case you wanted to do it. Obviously, you don't have to enter this, right? You can just like auto compound it yourself. But I just thought it was interesting, and yeah, that's about it. I still think Tomb is interesting, and as a Tomb as a participant in Tomb, I kind of want this peg to go down, right? Because for them to be faith for there to be faith in the ecosystem, there has to be like stronger faith in the peg, other than like the mysterious the DAO that like backs this peg. So if this can just go back down and just like keep bouncing, and then maybe it goes parabolic again when FTM goes up, I'd rather that's happen, right? Because the longer this stays above here, I feel like when it comes crashing down, the peg is less likely to hold. But who knows? In the short term, I still think it's a pretty good way to DCA into Phantom, right? Maybe you can allocate 1% of the portfolio, and that 1% will accrue 0.7% a day or something, right? If you just auto compound it on Grim Finance or something. Okay, cool. Let's move over to the Terra ecosystem, because obviously, I mean, just looking at the price of Terra, it hit $60 today, and it's outperforming everything. But I just wanted to go over this proposal that I thought was interesting. This isn't really an actionable proposal, but I just thought it was interesting. And there was a governance proposal to increase liquidity on Ethereum for USD. And if you actually click into the proposal and you go back down, they're essentially saying that like we're gonna take $12 million, right, swap it to Luna, and then use it for convex bribes, I believe, right? To incentivize people to provide liquidity for UST on Curve, right? To make UST a more liquid stablecoin, and then take $250 million in UST to farm CVX and Curve, right? And return it into the community pool, and then using $2 million to bribe for token mac incentives. I'm not going to touch on token mac later, token mac in this video, but they're kind of like a liquidity director, right? But I just wanted to share this. I think it's interesting. They're focusing on improving liquidity, right? Making UST a more viable stablecoin, right? And it kind of shows you how powerful CVX and Curve is, right? And I often see these arguments of like this new stable swap protocol or like whatever, but Curve is king. And this is definitely on my shopping list in the next bear market, right? Or when I think that it's going to be a bear market, a way to go risk off. I think it's a great way to earn passive income. For those interested, please go to, where is it? CVX and Curve strategies. Like this is like one of the most gigabrain threads in the Discord, and Xerox Chaos, it's a really smart guy. Really respect him. He can answer a lot of your questions, and there's a lot of pin posts in case you were interested in like how to play CVX and Curve. And I feel like understanding CVX and Curve is going to be helpful in general, just because just to know that there's an option to use CVX and Curve for passive income in case you want to go risk off. But let's go over the Astroport Lockdrop, because I feel like for Luna, right? If you think back on what happened to Avalaunch, right? This is just a simple narrative that I think might happen for the price of Luna. But everyone was like, oh my god, Avalanche rush, super bullish, right? It's just like pumps a lot, right? And we play this well. And then Coinbase listing happened. It was like, oh my god, like Avalanche rug, right? it got Avalanche rush kept getting delayed, right? And then ultimately, like those incentives came online, the more protocols developed, a lot of people were rich, and it just like went up only, right? And it's still looking strong, right? But I'm more interested in playing FTM and Luna at this point, just for the risk reward. And I think the similar thing will happen for Luna, right? Because I feel like from here, the price went up, right, in anticipation for Astroport and Mars. But and I mean, like those dates for launch never got announced. But people expected it to be mid-November, and now they delayed it to early December, right? Early to mid-December, and then they were like, "Oh my god, like we got rugged by Delphi Labs." But now we're pumping again because Astroport is next week, right? And Mars is most likely going to be in January. So you have to really understand like these narratives, right? Because crypto is very, very reflexive. On the way up, people become more bullish. On the way down, people become more bearish. So when it comes to playing these rotations, you kind of have to think about like what is the future narrative that this token XYZ that I own. And Avalanche had a great narrative, right? I mean, they still have a great narrative, but given it's up a lot, right? So I argue that the next 2x from if I were to bet on the next 2x, right? I feel like Luna from 60 to 120 or FTM to 216 to 432 is a lot easier, right? And you're taking a lot less risk than betting on AVAX from 120 to 240. Maybe Luna to 60 to 120 is too optimistic, but I'm pretty biased towards the Terra ecosystem. I think they're doing something that's really different from these other EVM clones, and with real world use cases. And though it is speculative in nature, I still think that Luna is a pretty good place to park your capital. But let's get back into the Astroport airdrop and Lockdrop. So obviously, anyone that has participated in the Terra ecosystem prior to September 9th are going to be labeled TFI chads, right? Terra Finance chads, and we're going to get this airdrop. So for those, so the people that's going to get this airdrop, 12.5 million tokens, is going to go to Luna holders that had their tokens staked or had B Luna deposited on Anchor on September 9th, right? I'm pretty sure I had Luna on September 9th, so I'm going to get this. But I feel like my share, right, in terms of how many tokens I get, isn't going to be worth that much. I still think this airdrop is going to be worth roughly 4 figures for me. And I'm not sure how they're going to allocate it, right? Like, are they going to give more? If I had 100k staked versus 10k staked, does the 100k TFI Chad get more tokens? I'm not sure. But anyone that was a liquidity provider for TerraSwap is going to get 12.5 million tokens, and prior to September 9th. And I feel like these people are going to get so much more tokens than people here, right? Because there's a lot of people that stake their Luna or bonded a Luna, but there's a lot less people that was a liquidity provider. So, I wish I did this, right? I wish I knew this in advance. I definitely would have been a liquidity provider, but congratulations to anyone that did this. Anyone that did both probably will get like mid four figures or more. That's my hypothesis. I think Astroport, the market cap of this coin is going to be worth at least $500 million, just because this is Uniswap, Curve, and Balancer all in one protocol for the Terra ecosystem, and they don't really have any competitors, right? So I'm obviously super bullish Terra, and I'm super biased, so like I'm gonna maybe be too optimistic in that regard, but this is definitely something to look into. And for phase 1, the Lockdrop, right, this is what people had questions about. So essentially you can be, what happens for phase 1 starting December 6th up to the 13th, you can be a liquidity provider for TerraSwap and then migrate those LP tokens to Astro, and then essentially get like airdrop tokens essentially. So these are the pools. Luna UST is going to be allocated 34%, right? Which makes sense. I personally would probably not going to be being a liquidity provider here, right? Just because I'm bullish on the price of Luna. Ink UST gets 19%, which is a lot. I have like $1,000 worth of ink that I've farmed for the past couple of months, so I'm most likely going to take all my ink, pair it up with UST, and put it into here. Luna 15%. This is going to be super oversubscribed. I think everyone is going to want to do this because there's little impermanent loss risk, and you're just essentially staking Luna to earn Astro, right? So I'm fine with like not getting too much Astroport tokens, right? I just want to be a liquidity provider here and get as much tokens as possible. But I wouldn't be opposed to anyone doing Luna UST. It's pretty good, right? Obviously, I can't say for sure because it kind of depends on the numbers, like when it does launch. But I suspect this is going to be pretty anticipated and pretty hyped up launch. I still argue that Mars, right? Mars protocol is going to be the killer application for the Terra ecosystem. So, even though I said like, okay, maybe this plays out, right? Of like, let's just zoom out here, of like, similar to AVAX, hype, disappointment, expansion. I can also see this being like a more slow grind up because, Mars is not out yet. And Mars is going to be amazing protocol just because you can use M assets as collateral. They're also going to introduce under collateralized lending, right, on Mars, which I don't know if that'll be available for like retail participants, but I think it's going to lock up a lot of liquidity. And when it comes to narratives, I feel like Luna has a lot of narratives coming forward in the future. December, Astroport Lockdrop. January, Mars Lockdrop, right? Mars launch. And then, we've seen the market cap of UST go up, and I can see a lot of narratives around a decentralized stablecoin with UST, the Terra burn, right? The Luna burn, and all those narratives. And, this is one of my comfiest holds for me. I'm not necessarily interested in like trading my Luna, right? I've just been, I bought some here, and I've essentially just been like holding it. And I can see myself holding this for the majority of the market cycle. Not going to be really interested in trying to sell, buy low, sell high, and whatnot. Okay. And lastly, I do want to talk about Stader Labs. I think this is a really interesting protocol. They're going to introduce LUNAX, which is liquid staking, right? So right now, when you stake Luna, you can't really use that Luna, right? Sure, you get airdrops and whatnot, but it doesn't really help you, I guess, use the DeFi applications. But Stader is going to introduce this asset called LUNAX, which is going to be a liquid derivative of your staked Luna. So LUNAX is an compounding accrual token. So it's going to be similar to AUSD, where you can stake your Luna to a validator and then get LUNAX in return. And your LUNAX, you can use it in, I believe, Anchor, right? So what this means is that you can stake your Luna to be eligible for staking rewards as well as airdrops, and also get to be able to use it as collateral. So I'm not sure. So for Luna, you kind of give Anchor all your rewards. So I'm not sure if you're also going to get rewards when you use it for LUNAX. But even I still think like it's a pretty interesting protocol. And if you can use LUNAX, right, as a way to, I guess, provide liquidity, right? So let's say LUNAX and Luna, right, provide liquidity for that. I think it's going to be an interesting thing. And if you want to farm this token, their audits are going to be done soon. They're going to have community farming. I believe how it works is that you can essentially stake your Luna, and get SD tokens in return, right? The Stader tokens. I'm probably not going to do this just because if you look at the Terra ecosystem tokens, they just underperform Luna, right? Like Luna tokenomics are so good and people just like want to own Luna. So like all these other tokens, right? Like all these tokens just get dumped to the ground, right? I got my PSI token. I'm like put it into an auto compounder and it just got dumped on, right? So I mean it was a free airdrop, so like I don't really mind, but I know I wish I sold it for Luna. So not necessarily bullish to SD token, but I think the application itself is pretty interesting. Okay, that being said, let's kind of move over to the Avalaunch ecosystem, right? So let's kind of first touch on Avalaunch. So I kind of touched on this in my yesterday's update here, right? About how XAVA is actually outperforming the majority of the market. And XAVA is doing much better than AVAX. And I think one of the reasons is that, you know, the Launchpad has actually done really, really well. So if you go to all these sales for Tailcraft, right? IDO 28 cents, current price $13, Corvada. I mean, all these IDOs have done super well. And you need to stake your XAVA tokens in order to participate. And though you have to KYC and US investors are not allowed, I still think it's an interesting play when it comes to the entire narrative of if you think that, or if you believe in the idea that, you know, more Avalanche projects are going to launch in like late Q4, they're probably going to launch on XAVA, right? On Avalaunch, right? On Avalaunch. Though even if you can't participate into these in these IDOs, maybe it makes sense to, you know, just play XAVA as just a token appreciation play, right? And of course, this was before. I mean, I talked about this like yesterday, like $14 something. But obviously, this chart looks vertical, so like I'm not gonna really recommend anyone like, you know, like I'm not like saying this is a great buy, but you know, just bringing it to your radar. It's let me refresh. The price is up a lot. Roughly a $300 million market cap. One sign of caution is that the token distribution is not favorable, right? So if you go to the tokenomics, right, I can link this in the description below. But this article was written, I believe, right, March 30th. Let's just say April, right? And you know, it says that the foundation has a 6-month cliff, right? So they get their tokens vested linearly for 12 months. Starting October, right? Advisors, the same thing. Seed round, similar thing, right? So it just seems like, you know, these people are going to get a payday, right? So maybe right now is not the best timing, but just bringing it to your attention. And maybe the alpha here is that, you know, maybe you should like look into these IDOs and looking into, you know, like how these tokens might do in the future, because, you know, Corvada, Tailcraft, and they've all done so well. So back to this. Back to my notion, and you should always know that, you know, Avalanche Eco projects, right? I'm just compiling all the research into here, just so you have like a centralized, I guess, source where you can kind of track what's new in this ecosystem. And I've made 2 updates. So, you know, Tailcraft, I said it last week, and it came out that did really well. So first thing I want to go over is Imperium Empires. So this is going to be the first AAA game by it's going to be a game, space metaverse. Obviously, a bunch of buzzwords. If you go to the website, let's do this. The world's first AAA game. AAA, I believe, means like high production value, right? Let's just look this up actually. AAA gaming, right? AAA games are video games most distinguished by their massive development and marketing budgets, right? So they're claiming that they have a lot of money essentially. And the website's pretty interesting. And if you go to their Twitter, I believe, right, proud to announce a collaboration and investment from Avalaunch, right? So you can expect Avalaunch to list this. I'm guessing, right? Avalaunch doesn't really announce their projects that they're gonna have, right? It's kind of like a stealth release, right? It's like, oh, like next week we have this. So it's kind of interesting to look into, you know, what new projects are gonna launch first. So there's Imperium. You can look into it later, obviously, right? All the links will be here. And the second thing I want to go over is Colony Lab. And I thought this was interesting as well. This is going to be, there wasn't a date on this, right? It says IDO Avalaunch, right? Oh, it got announced today, right? So this is part of Avalaunch as well, still on the 6th of December. And this is pretty interesting. So let's just go to their website and just scroll through it to see what I see here. So this is going to be a community-driven Avalanche Accelerator. powered by the CLY token. So it kind of invests in, I guess, early ecosystem projects with the fund governed by its community. It kind of sounds like Wonderland in time, right? In the DAO that it's trying to become. But it allows you to stake your rewards, liquidity provider, multiple airdrops, yada, yada, yada. I think it's interesting, right? It's hard for me to like really give a fundamental narrative for this. But it says 10% of the capital would be deployed in the top 10 projects built on Avalaunch, ranked by market cap, rebalanced quarterly. So I guess this is a way to, or I guess this is going to be like a DAO or a fund or like an accelerator that invests in its own ecosystem. So could be interesting, right? I haven't heard about Colony Lab before this, but you know, they're all part of going to be Avalaunch, right? So Imperium and the Colony going to be part of it, Avalaunch. So you know, yes, this, oh my god, yes, this token is insane, but you know, just look into it, right? The market cap, tokenomics, iffy, market cap, pretty high, but just look into it, right? So I do want to touch on BenQi, the liquid staking aspect, and I'm not saying this is not a bullish like narrative for BenQi, right? This is a pure farm token, governance token, and you know, it's hard to see this thing turning around. But you know, if you look at the chart, it doesn't look that bad, right? In the grand scheme of things. But I do want to bring this up just because I think liquid staking, just as a concept, is just like a huge total addressable market, right? Talked about Stader and now talking about liquid staking on BenQi. So what they're going to allow people to do is that they're going to allow people that have their AVAX staked on the P chain, right, for validator nodes, and allow that to use the staked Avalanche as collateral on BenQi. I think it's going to unlock billions of dollars of liquidity into Avalanche. And though this might not translate into the key token, right, the BenQi token, maybe it's just like one of those other bullish narratives and catalysts coming up for the Avalanche ecosystem that you should look into. Because if you go into stakingrewards.com, you can kind of see how much Avalanche is staked. And I'm not really sure how these values are derived, right? How does Solana have $84 billion staked, but the market cap is $65 billion? So I'm not really sure how this is calculated, but you know, let's just assume this is right? Maybe, you know, these are like not in circulating supply, so it's like, you know, part of staked value. Who knows, right? But you know, $30 billion worth of AVAX is staked on the validator nodes. And you know, most of these people, they're not going to want to use DeFi, right? Think about all the normies that just like stake it, and they're 9.39%, and they're like super happy with like their yield or whatever, right? Little do they know that they can earn much more on Aave without like having to lock it up for a few months or whatever. But let's just, you know, be conservative and say, you know, what if 5% of the staked value enters BenQi, right? And you can use your staked AVAX as collateral, borrow stablecoins against it, and like farm or whatnot. Well, that's $1.5 billion that's going to be unlocked into BenQi. That's going to add to the TVL, which is going to increase the amount of stablecoins being borrowed, which is going to increase the stablecoin yields on BenQi. And you can kind of see the narrative for BenQi develop, right? In terms of like having higher TVL. And though, you know, higher TVL doesn't necessarily translate to higher price, I could see a narrative for BenQi, right? I'm not really deploying capital into this one, but you know, just bringing it to your attention and how I think about things. You know, they're listed on KuCoin, Binance, and I believe FTX. Token doesn't look that bad, but it definitely does not look good. And I believe, let me connect to the Avalanche chain so you can kind of see what you can earn on the BenQi token, right? So if you go to here, go to markets, you can earn 82% just single-sided staking on key tokens. And I forget what the collateral factor is, 30%, which is not that great. But, you know, I still think it's an interesting play that I think you should be aware of, because I talked to the team for BenQi, and they said that this is going to launch, most likely going to launch this year. So, like, let's say late December, right? Liquid staking. And it's hard to forecast the appetite for, I guess, you know, people staking on Avalanche validators to, you know, use it in DeFi. But, you know, just a potential narrative, potential catalyst. And, you know, I'm trying to do research looking into the next narrative, potential catalyst and whatnot. So, you know, key token, earn 82%, use it as collateral. Could be interesting as a play. And lastly, to touch on this Avalaunch, right? You can take AVAX, pair it with XAVA, and earn 55% APR on Trader Joe. If you want to gain exposure into the XAVA token. Obviously, the price is mooning, and there's nothing I can say, right? More to say. There's like, yeah, I mean, there's no way for me to know if this is a good entry or not, but just letting it be known and bringing it to your attention. So let's go over the Harmony ecosystem, right? This video is getting kind of long, but I guess that's kind of what I'm good at, right? I just keep rambling on and on. But you know, I often talk about this, you know, hypothetical Q1 rotation into Harmony, right? Just because right now, in the short term, the ecosystem is not ready. They don't even have a chain link, and you know, the only thing usable is DeFi Kingdoms. I know Euphoria is like an own fork that's doing well, but you know, like DeFi Kingdom is like essentially the only thing that's exciting. But I saw this today, or I guess this was proposed the 28th, but there's a proposal to launch Abracadabra on Harmony. And I don't think that this is official yet, right? This is just a Harmony team member essentially saying that, hey, like, you know, Abracadabra is cool, right? And we want them to launch on our chain. And we're going to provide 2 million in the Harmony token over 6 months, 1 billion in the first 3 months, and then rest of the funds 3 months after. So I guess 3 months, they'll get $1 million over 1 tokens to incentivize, I guess, borrowing and whatnot. And then after 3 months is over, they'll like not give rewards for 3 months. And then months 7 through 9, they'll give $1 million of 1 tokens again. I just thought it was interesting, right? And it kind of aligns with my narrative of a Q1 rotation, of just this general idea of Harmony will eventually catch a bid. Not yet, because the ecosystem is not really that great, but you know, I'm seeing positive signs of the ecosystem potentially being, you know, a more thriving ecosystem in the future. So I'm not sure what the timeline is. Maybe it's going to be early 2022, and you know, this is also, it kind of shows you how strong Abracadabra is, right? I mean, every chain wants Abracadabra on their chain, just because it just creates excitement. It's just a good application, right? People want to use Abracadabra. People want to use MIM, right? Yeah, I just want to bring it to your attention. And you know, here's a nice looking face, smile of Justin Brown, right? Justin Brown, good guy. Okay. And lastly, when touching on the Harmony ecosystem, I mean, I talk about DeFi Kingdoms a lot, right? I mean, it's just like my favorite farm. But when it comes to like farms, right? I feel like if you're interested in gaining exposure to these L1 tokens, right? I feel like the Jewel AVAX pool, right? Already 900%, pretty decent, right? Jewel 1, right? If you want to gain exposure, right? Is interesting. Jewel FTM, good. Jewel Luna, also pretty interesting, right? So, you know, if you want to be a total farmer and you are bullish DeFi Kingdoms, or maybe you don't have a position in DeFi Kingdoms and you want to establish one, maybe if you're bullish Luna, you can enter this. Maybe if you're bullish ETH, you can enter this. There might be impermanent loss, but you know, the APRs are pretty insane. FTM here, etc. So, you know, Jewel, DeFi Kingdoms, I talk about this a lot just because I love it. Matic Soul, I talk about this a lot, but you know, just don't ignore DeFi Kingdoms, right? Don't think of this as like a degen farm with the pool too. You can also just gain exposure to the Matic token or like these other L1 tokens, and you know, just slowly accumulate Jewel that way. Because the price of Jewel has been pretty steady, right? It went to $10, went to like $6, and now it's stabilizing roughly at $8. And you know, I still remain bullish on this protocol. Okay, so we're at 43 minutes. So I'll talk about a few other things. So first of all, let's do this feedback form, right? So for those that are new to the Discord, I have this every month. I do this. I have these feedback forms, and every week I choose 4 like winners to essentially have a 30-minute video call with me. It's not mandatory, right? I just randomly select anyone that responds to this monthly feedback form, and then we can talk about like whatever you want to talk about. So this week I'll be choosing 6 winners, just because I missed last week because it was like vacation, Thanksgiving and whatnot. But this is a really short one, right? First of all, like preferred research for L1 farms, pick up to 4. Obviously, the correct answer is like you want me to research everything, right? However, you know, if I had to focus on 4 ecosystems, like what would I pick, or what would you choose, right? And kind of, I guess, collecting feedback on like what ecosystems interest you guys. Believe in the flipping in the next 12 months. This is an interesting question, right? I used to be a Bitcoin maxi, and I used to think that like ETH will never flip Bitcoin, but I'm more open to the idea that ETH could flip Bitcoin, and it would definitely not surprise me. So I just want to collect the general sentiment around ETH versus Bitcoin. My guess is yes in the next 12 months, but it's going to mark a market cycle top, right? Or at least very close to it. Or, yes, no, or yes, but it will take more than 12 months. Just curious. I just want to ask this question every single month, just so I get a general understanding of like how risk on people are, your stablecoin allocation, and then anything you want to tell. This is not a mandatory question, but just this will take like 3 minutes, right? Just do it, and maybe you get to chat with me, or etc. Okay, I think that's actually everything I wanted to talk about. So let's get back to the markets. Okay, the equities markets rebounding. I'm super bullish Luna, obviously. It would not surprise me if Luna gets like $100, right? It's not out of the question. For me, the way I think about it is like Luna, I'm just bullish all time frames, short, mid, long term. So I'm just gonna hold on. Obviously, if everything is looking parabolic, I might take risk off. But this is one of those assets that I don't really plan on selling. In the short to midterm, maybe the midterm. But that's kind of how I think about it. I think FTM, the chart doesn't look that great, right? But I think the Tomb Farm is good enough, right? I just earn 0.7% a day, right, on my FTM position. So even if the price of FTM doesn't do anything, I'm like, growing my FTM stack. And I do think that they are fundamentally undervalued. They have Coinbase coming up hopefully soon. So there's that. I think Avalaunch, I missed the second leg, right? I caught the first leg pretty well, but I missed the second leg. It's still a great chain. I just think that they need it. I just think Avalaunch needs to consolidate for a little bit, right? It's gone parabolic. Like what's a few weeks of consolidation, right? It's not going to hurt anybody. And one doesn't look as great. If you put everything in log scale, right? Let's, for example, put in the weekly time frame, right? This chart actually looks pretty decent. And I kind of want to go over like some charts, right? So just put everything into log scale and like look at how much everything is up, right? this is literally the price of Luna. What the hell? Like, what is this? FTM2, right? Literally, this was 0.002 cents back in March, and now it's like it's ridiculous, right? Avalaunch 2, right? 1 Solana, obviously. It's pretty insane, right? I've often seen like these arguments of like when's alt season, when alt season. Well, like we've essentially had like a 12-month alt season, so I just thought it was funny. I feel like taking a step back and like seeing how much these coins have gone up kind of shows you like okay, like maybe we aren't early in the cycle, right? I don't believe that we're early in the cycle. I think we're closer to the 6th inning than we are in the 3rd inning, and it kind of makes sense to start like taking risk off in the future. I'm not doing it right now, right? In terms of my portfolio construction, I'm still relatively risk on, right? It hasn't really changed, essentially. Focusing on farming spell. I feel like my Bitcoin position was like 50%, now it's 33%, right? I haven't done anything. I haven't sold my Bitcoin. It's just underperformed everything, right? So it's down to 33%. Ether, right? I was stacking this. It's funny because a year ago, I bought ETH at $400, and I thought that was expensive. And then most recently, right? Let's go back to the daily time frame. Most recently, I was able to buy ETH at under $4,000, and I'm like, yes. I ETH at a bargain, right? I'm literally buying ETH at 10x from like when I first bought it, and I'm like celebrating that. But it's kind of crazy how like crypto works, right? Like our brain kind of forgets how much things are up. So I think it definitely makes sense to approach everything from like when it comes to approaching markets, I think it's best to be conservative and approach it from like a cautious standpoint, and then be like pleasantly surprised when markets outperform to the upside, right? That's how I view things with FTM, AVAX. So hopefully this was a useful video. Went over FTM, Terra, AVAX, and Harmony, right? I guess I keep blabbering, but I'll finish the video here. But I don't think it's a bad idea to just buy or accumulate one tokens, understanding that it might not do anything in the short term, but understanding that maybe in Q1 it's gonna perform, right? It's gonna perform, right? Because I'm not necessarily too impressed with the Harmony team in terms of like building out their DeFi ecosystem, but I'm seeing I'm seeing good signs, right? The fact that they're trying to incentivize Abracadabra to come over to the Harmony ecosystem means that they're thinking really heavily about or deeply about, okay, what kind of applications do we need, right? And they understand that. They've done the research. They think Abracadabra is a great application. They want to bridge it over, or they want to port it over. And this is one of those signs, right? These are signs that the Harmony team, they're on top of their shit. And no, though I do still argue that DeFi Kingdoms is a really passive way to gain exposure to the one ecosystem, right? Maybe just through the one Jewel 1 pool, right? Jewel 1 pool, right? Or the one USDC pool, right? Or the one stablecoin pool, right? Here, 1 ETH or 1 USDC, 1 BUSD. I would not hate. I would not hate anyone, or I would not be opposed to anyone accumulating one at this particular moment, because when it comes to narratives, right? People want to buy things as they're going up because that's everyone's like, oh my god, so bullish, right? But maybe it makes sense to buy things understanding that it's not going to perform in the short term, but the risk reward is favorable in the mid to longer term, right? And I'm not saying that one is guaranteed to perform well, right? I'm not saying that, but when it comes, like farming, trading, crypto investments, everything is about risk reward, and I believe Harmony, the one token, at a $3 billion valuation when Tezos is $5 billion, right? And you see these catalysts coming up of Chainlink, DeFi Kingdoms becoming more valuable, and Abracadabra coming, right? With Aave coming at some point, right? And Curve just came over. I could see this being, like the market cap of FTM, like where it is now, right? Like, would anyone be surprised if Harmony gets to like $6 billion market cap? No, right? Like, no, definitely not. And the meme, right? The meme of $1 to $1 is going to be super strong at some point. I'm definitely not going to hold on to my one until it gets to $1. I think it makes sense to take profits like 80 cents or something, right? Because $1 is going to be huge psychological resistance, and for the market cap of one to get to $1, or for the price to get to $1, it essentially has to get to like $12 billion market cap, which is pretty expensive in my opinion. But closing out the video on that, ETH BTC looking really good, but I'm not pessimistic on these L1s, right? Luna, FTM, AVAX, One, Solana, even these other ones like Crow, right? I'm not necessarily pessimistic on that, right? That could be a narrative that ETH maxis might throw at you, but in this world where everything is valued relative to each other, if ETH goes up, sure, it might go up a lot more in the short term, but I feel like these other L1s can play catch up. Thank you guys for watching, and have fun farming out there.